just like a handheld battery operated power drill allows someone to build like a whole house, basically, like where you used to have to use a hammer and nails. You know, AI can allow you to just take an ultrasound into someone's home in the middle of nowhere and do scans to tell a whole bunch of things that are going on. It can allow you to make MRI scans happen much, much faster, which could shorten wait times. It can, automatically calculate all the numbers for cancer follow-up so that we can do more efficient cancer follow-up and determine which treatments might be more useful. So I think the AI can make care more equal because people in rural areas can benefit better from it than they can in the current scheme. It can make it more effective because sometimes it's faster and sometimes it's more accurate with AI.
Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks very much.
Can you explain a little bit about where your professional career started?
Sure. So I actually started after high school. I thought I was going to be an engineer and an architect. So I
Oh,
went
wow.
into civil engineering and got interested in roads and bridges and structural things. And then one of my sisters got diabetes during that time, and I thought, maybe I can be more helpful to the world. And so I went into medicine, and I did a PhD in biomedical engineering as part of a combined MD PhD. And so from that, I was quite interested in the imaging aspects of my PhD, and that got me interested in medical imaging, and I went into radiology. And then, so career-wise, so I did my residency in Edmonton. Then I did 2 specialist fellowships, so pediatric radiology in Melbourne, Australia, and musculoskeletal radiology at MGH in Boston. And so then I came back, and I came in with a academic chair position, the Capitol Health Endowed Chair, and so I had an academic role right when I started, and then the last 6 years I've had a Canada CFAR AI chair, so I work clinically part-time, and part-time I work on the academic side, building AI tools for radiology.
So you kind of already mentioned it, but what specifically are your specialties in radiology and working here at MIC?
Yeah. So I think there's three really. One is pediatric imaging. So anything to do with children. So all the different types of imaging of children. And I'm on the call schedule for like when I do call, it's to take care of kids in the hospital. And then musculoskeletal imaging. So I do, today I'm on a joint injection day, and I read MRIs and do other things for adult bone and joint problems. And then my third specialty is on the academic side and on the AI side. So I am, for MIC, I'm the chair of the AI steering committee, and we're looking at ways to bring AI safely and effectively into practice in MIC.
And so what do you think kind of gives you an advantage having an engineering background and a medical background?
So it's been people would look at me a bit funny with that, but it's actually super helpful. For my specific career, it's very useful because during my PhD, I was using artificial neural networks, which is the early form of AI from the 1990s. So that exact thing is what sort of the later developments of AI have come from that. But more generally, engineering is a really good fit with radiology because you learn how equipment works, how physical processes work. You learn how to think a certain way, which really fits well with radiology is the application of technology to the body, and so I'm in a good spot for understanding how to do that.
And do you think it helps with your coworkers and some of your other peers in medicine?
It's been super helpful for me to, in my lab, several of my students are engineers or computer scientists, and so I can speak their language,
Yeah,
So,
very cool. So we're gonna go on to kind of like our next topic. You've done research. Can you explain a little bit what that was?
sure. So, when I was on fellowship in Australia, one of the things that you learn as a pediatric radiologist is to check babies' hips to see if they're normal or not. And so, really, every baby should get checked for this. the hip is a ball and socket joint, and if it's in most people, it's normally formed and it's a stable joint. But if the socket is not formed right, then the ball is loose in the socket, and it's unstable, and that doesn't show up right away. But you can, over time, as a child and as a young adult, then you can get arthritis quite early, and so we call that hip dysplasia, and you can detect it using an ultrasound near birth. However, that ultrasound is really expensive and difficult to get for everybody in the population. So we're not actually screening the whole population to see. Like, most babies in Alberta don't get an ultrasound to check if their hips are normal. And that's unfortunate because about 2% of Albertans develop this condition. And so it leads to a whole bunch of arthritis and hip replacements, surgeries, and just a lot of suffering that could be avoided if we could screen every baby. So I got quite interested in that, thinking, well, here's a place where radiology can do some good. If we could figure out a way to screen these babies cost effectively, and make a program that could screen everybody, then you could prevent arthritis in a lot of people. So just on that, the stats are that in Alberta, there are about 4 babies born every day with hip arthritis, or sorry, with hip dysplasia, and then there are about 2 arthroplasties done every day.
Oh, wow.
So for hip replacements for hip dysplasia. So if you can imagine the cost savings to the system. If you didn't have to do all those hip arthroplasty surgeries for thousands and thousands of dollars, and all the arthritis care that leads up to it, like the joint injections that I'm doing today in my rotation. So so I feel quite strongly that we should be doing this screening, and I've been working for quite a long time on ways to do that.
What are ways to do that cost effectively?
Yeah, so in the 1980s, ultrasound of the hip was developed. This Austrian guy named Graf developed a system for it. And so it's, you do a 15-minute ultrasound scan with a trained musculoskeletal sonographer, and you check the hips. But nowadays we have portable ultrasound, which is like the size of your smartphone and plugs into a smartphone. And then we have AI, which can look at the images and interpret the images. So I could teach you to do, quite quickly, I could teach you to scan the baby using this handheld portable ultrasound in about 2 minutes, and the AI can look at the pictures and say, okay, this is normal, or I don't see normal, and you need to follow that up.
With additional screening.
With additional, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So so this would not be, the actual screening is not something that a radiologist like at MIC would do, but anybody that failed the screening would go on to get a proper, like, conventional full ultrasound study, and maybe see a surgeon to assess.
And so what other ways on top of that are you using artificial intelligence in your work?
So my research in general is focused on ways to take artificial intelligence and help with making medical imaging better. So a big way is by using it for other point of care ultrasound tasks. Like, I think a lot of our best healthcare and a lot of our best imaging happens in the hospital, but a lot of people in Alberta live pretty far from the hospital. And so if you can take the expertise from the hospital out to them, out into the community, like with an ultrasound probe that is filled with AI routines that have been trained on thousands of scans done in the hospital or in our clinics, and you can take that out to Slave Lake or Fort McMurray or to a First Nations reserve, then you can provide better care in the community. You can screen people for conditions, not just babies' hips, but you can look for mothers to see what their what their baby is like inside. You can check the heart and lungs. We did a project on a basic echo. You can look for injuries like rotator cuff injuries, or for wrist and elbow. You can look for different kinds of cancer. We're looking at thyroid cancer. We're looking at working on breast cancer. So you can use the ultrasound probe with AI to look at all sorts of different parts of the body and find and really help with a lot of different areas of healthcare.
Can you explain a little bit about what the difference is using AI for something like this than to, like, generate photos or video?
Yeah, so a problem with, so it's very easy to create slop with AI, right? Like, you can create, very wordy documents very quickly. You can create pictures. You can tell, all of these things, like in the world of natural images or Instagram. I mean, it's all kind of fun and games, right? But in healthcare, the AI can't make stuff up. Like, it can't. You have to. It's very important when you're training an AI tool. You have to force it to not hallucinate. You have to have ways to limit it and do like a sanity check to make sure that what it is giving you back makes sense. Like some of our earlier AI algorithms, we were looking for these baby hips. We tried and the test would give you back a normal hip result if you did a baby with normal hips, but you could also scan your own wrist and it would tell you normal hips. So it just, because it wasn't expecting to see a wrist, but it looks a little bit like a hip for some reason, so it would call it a normal hip. So obviously that's completely useless, right? So we have to constrain the AI. We have to think of ways to limit it and make sure that it's not making stuff up and not giving us answers that make no sense. So a lot of my work is actually on trying to do that.
So why do you think it is critical for radiologists and doctors, specialists, rather than just software engineers to lead creation systems?
So there's two reasons for that. Probably many, but two come to mind right away. One of them is that and I've seen this before in multiple different companies, is that if you have a company or a research lab that has only computer scientists in it, they will often think to do, or engineers and computer scientists, they will often think to do like they'll build a tool that does something they imagine somebody wants, right? Like they'll build a tool to look at a CT scan a certain way, and they'll build it the way they think is going to work. But if you don't have a clinician involved, if you don't have like someone who has medical training, then you're probably building something nobody wants. Like, you're building a tool to answer a question nobody really has. And so having a clinician on the team when you're doing developing AI tools is crucial, because it's like they're the users, they're the people who, I need this tool to answer this question. So that's a really important part of being and a radiologist has the full clinical training of any other physician, and then also the expertise about the images. So I feel like any team that's working on health AI that doesn't have a clinician involved makes me a little nervous. So the other reason that it's important to have a clinician is because all of us as physicians, we have taken the Hippocratic Oath, and that we're aligned in protecting the interests of the patient. And somebody has to be thinking about the individual patient, because a lot of these AI apps, they might be 95% accurate or 97% accurate. And if you're a computer scientist, that's pretty good. But if you're a physician, then you think about, well, this has to be right for every patient. Like maybe it gets a few answers wrong, but what is the consequence if it gets that wrong? Maybe it only is a bit oversensitive, so there's too many false positives. Like if you're trying to detect a serious condition, suppose you're trying to detect a cancer. You want to detect all the cancers, and maybe you're going to have a bit of errors where you pick up a few extra. And so those that are not cancer, so they'll get evaluated. So it's much more important to not miss any cancers than it is to make sure that every single one is correct. So a physician will help with that alignment and make sure that the tool is safe for each individual patient.
And if once the product does become, say, in clinics or hospitals, when an error does arise, what happens?
So this is a new field, because in Canada, there's not that many AI tools actually in use yet. And they almost always are set up so that they're only a decision support tool. So it's not giving you the final answer. So that basically throws the liability back onto the physician. Like me as a radiologist, if I use an AI tool, then I am, I'm still ultimately responsible as if I wasn't using the tool. Like it's still me saying, I think this patient has cancer or not. So then that prevents, that reduces the chance of lawsuits for the AI companies, right? But the AI can produce medical error, obviously. Like even my hip screening program could, miss cases, or could overdiagnose cases, and people might get the wrong treatment. So what happens in those situations? It's kind of new, right? People haven't really done a lot with it yet, but it's going to be very important as we increasingly rely on AI. And so I'm actually involved in the Canadian Association of Radiologists AI committee as well, and we're looking at ways to manage the impacts of the AI. So I don't have one single answer, because it depends on how bad it is. Like, what does the AI say that there's a lump in the breast that needs to be checked, when that lump is probably fine. Well, maybe that's only of minor consequence because it is still stressful because the patient would worry and have to get the test. But maybe the AI misses a cancer. Well, that's much more serious, but it's only really serious if the radiologist also kind of wasn't looking at the pictures because the AI was and took the AI for granted. So we have to train our radiologists to understand how to manage the AI properly. So that's an important role, is to sort of the human AI interface, like how do we use these new fancy tools to help us do our job faster and better, but not, and how do we limit the consequences of errors? So it's a very complicated area, and so I don't have a really simple answer there, but I'm working on that in many ways, to try and contain the damage, make sure that we do this the best we can.
And kind of makes me think of, same with like patient information. How do you ensure that patient information isn't going to be used in another form of AI?
Yeah, so that's a very big deal. Like that's one of the reasons actually that in the non-medical field, it's much easier to build AI than in the medical field, because we have to work with anonymized data, and we can't just dump data into the cloud. Like you can't just, put patient records into like, ChatGPT, because it goes into a cloud server in the USA, right? That data has crossed a border. It's in the cloud. The chatbot is using that, can use it for training, and that data can reappear in different ways. So a lot of the tools we're building, we try to build it so that it can be run on premises, so like in the hospital or clinic, so that you don't need a cloud. And so you can protect where the data goes. And you also have to have robust anonymization so that we strip the images of anything that could be identifiable before you put it in. So the only thing the AI sees is an image that you can't identify. So easier said than done, but it's a very important, like the data privacy is a super important concern that we think about all the time.
And then same with in the future, do you see there being an issue with implementing this in like public hospitals and for like legal, ethical, cultural reasons?
hmm Yeah, so a lot of people are increasingly worried about what happens to their data, and there's good reason to be, because I think, it might make sense for whenever a patient comes into a clinic or hospital, there should be a little brief discussion which says your data is being collected, and do you agree that it's okay to use your data in an AI model, anonymized or not? Or they should be at least aware that there's that possibility, because it is increasingly possible for that to happen. So in the future, I think it's very important for people to have control of their data and understand where their data could go, and to refuse if they don't want that. So I think that we should be trying to find ways for patients to consent to it being used appropriately, or being at least aware of what's happening with it. And so there's an educational piece, and there's a figuring out how to get broad consent piece as well.
I see a lot too on just like posts talking about radiologists and new radiologists going into the field not wanting to do it because they're scared of AI potentially taking their jobs. When you kind of say to that,
Well, AI like job descriptions are going to change quite a bit.
yeah.
Like 50 years ago, radiology was just X-ray, right? Pretty much a little bit of ultrasound. So it's changing very fast. It used to be that you would read an image, like the way that I trained is that you basically are reading an image raw or naked, like you just have the image and you're interpreting it. But in future, radiologists are going to be reading images with heavy support from AI. So the AI will look at all the images and come up with a preliminary diagnosis or a preliminary report. So the job of the radiologist changes, because then you're supervising these tools. Someone still needs to supervise it, do a sanity check, and make sure that the tool is right, and also has to be in charge of implementing these tools and monitoring them to make sure that they're working properly and ensuring their safety. And it's kind of like, it is a big shift in radiology practice, because instead of looking at the images yourself without any backup, you have a lot of help doing that. Maybe so much help that the government might not want to pay the radiologist later to do it, right? So, but I think the radiologist is going to still get paid and still have a job, and have a possibly even more important job, because you're making sure that you're managing all these tools and packages, so to ensure that patients ultimately are being, that care for the patients is the priority. So there's still, the role of the radiologist is going to shift. Um, and I guess what I would say to that is that I think people going into radiology in the future would be well advised to have an engineering or computer science
Oh,
background.
wow.
I think
Yeah.
later, like that down the road, I would say the ones who are the most successful are likely going to be the ones who understand the tools they're working with the
Mm,
best.
cool. And do you think for like long-term implications for the average patient, what is this going to do?
Well, I think it's actually pretty exciting in a way. Like we've talked a lot about things to be afraid of, but actually, what AI can do is it can increase the reach. Like it allows you to do more.
Yeah.
So, like you could have just like a handheld battery operated power drill allows someone to build like a whole house, basically, like where you used to have to use a hammer and nails.
Mhm.
AI can allow you to just take an ultrasound into someone's home in the middle of nowhere and do scans to tell a whole bunch of things that are going on. It can allow you to make MRI scans happen much, much faster, which could shorten wait times. It can, automatically calculate all the numbers for cancer follow-up so that we can do more efficient cancer follow-up and determine which treatments might be more useful. So I think the AI can make care more equal because people in rural areas can benefit better from it than they can in the current scheme. It can make it more effective because sometimes it's faster and sometimes it's more accurate with AI. So it can actually, if used properly, it has the potential to accelerate the care we give, make it more personalized, and make it more equitable.
Mm,
So.
awesome. And kind of at the end of our questions, but do you want to speak a little bit about your companies?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so almost all of my colleagues from my biomedical engineering class in the back in the 1990s have gone on to start companies. And that's kind of what you do as a biomedical engineer.
Mhm.
So I've had an entrepreneurial side. Before I was a radiologist, I helped start a company called the Dizzy Fix, which was working on a biomedical device. While I'd been a partner of MIC, we've been working on, there was a company called Meadow.ai, which partnered with MIC to build some tools, some AI tools, and was working on our hip dysplasia project. That company got bought by an American company, and I'm so at the moment, uh, I'm sort of out of founding startup companies right now, but I've learned a lot from the
Yeah.
process of doing that. And sometimes the company, there was another company that kind of got sold to a Chinese person at a loss, and that was a bit disappointing.
Oh
But
no.
Meadow has actually the algorithms have been incorporated into a big ultrasound manufacturer, so I'm quite
Very
proud
cool.
of that.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting journey, and it helps me see the AI development from that industrial perspective too, which I think is a useful. It's useful to have those many different hats, and then I can be a more useful advisor on the MIC side.
Mhm. Perfect. And was there anything else you wanted to talk about or anything that I missed?
Um, I guess I would just add that I'm super grateful to MIC over the years. I was first recruited by Rob Lambert, who was really visionary in seeing the potential of what we could do together. And MIC has granted me very generously over the years the academic time to do this work. So it's been the time and the support to allow us to do projects within the MIC environment. And so I think it's pretty unique. There's not a lot of radiology practices that have had that kind of vision to support this kind of work and this innovation. And so I'm super proud of MIC and happy to be a partner in all of this.
Mhm. Well, perfect. Thank you for taking your time to talk to me and talk to us. And yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
pleasure to be here. Thanks, Brooklyn.